If you just installed a glass shower door and you need help sealing the gap between the glass and the threshold, hopefully this video can help you out. Thanks for clicking. My name's Ryan. Welcome to my channel and to this video. If you have a shower threshold, that kind of looks something like this, where there's a small gap between your door and the top of the threshold. Hopefully this video can help you out. I recently did a shower glass install here about 6 months, no, almost a year ago now. And it's held up beautifully. We absolutely love this thing. However, I'm not a professional, I got to admit. And when you close the door, things for the most part are pretty sealed up. But a certain angle when you're actually in the shower, like if you're like scrubbing your face, for example, the water kind of drips off your elbow and goes down the door directly, and then over, a 10-minute shower, you can have a little bit of water build up here on the other side of the thresholds. And you can see there's an actual gap. I was pretty darn close in my measurement, but not perfect, unfortunately. Now, I could have built that threshold up a little bit taller. That is certainly one possibility. Let me just pour some water on here. This is kind of what it looks like after a shower. Just a little bit of water that gathers. You have to kind of wipe it off. And most of it evaporates. It's not a huge deal. On occasion, it'll be overflowed if you take like 2 showers in a row, for example. Like my wife showering right after me, there might be a little bit of water buildup. So this is the problem we're going to solve in this video. So we've got a couple of solutions here for you. Both are based on this concept right here. We're going to be building up with 100% silicone a barrier, one that's maybe pressed up kind of against the door, or one that looks like this, that's more smooth and centered along the line. Now it's clear 100% silicone, so it should not be visually distracting at all. It should just offer a nice little barrier to keep the water inside the shower. So this is what I'm dealing with here. This is a bit unorthodox, I realize. I'm no pro, just a DIYer, and saving huge money here, trying to solve problems around my house on a day-to-day basis. So these are the materials we'll need: a Q-tip, some anti-stick cooking spray, and some 100% silicone caulking. By the way, click that like button, subscribe, and share this video with friends or family if you think this may help. All right, so we're gonna get a little bit of that anti-stick cooking spray and the Q-tip. Might want to use a washcloth as opposed to paper towel. I'm just going to dab it on here. Now be really careful. We're going to practice our steady hand art skills. We're going to wipe a little bit of that grease on the bottom part of the glass, and you don't want to touch the top of the threshold, because the idea here is that when we apply the 100% silicone caulking next, in our next step, we don't want it to stick to the glass door. We want to prevent it from adhering to the glass, but we do want it to stick to the top of that threshold. So we have the non-stick spray applied with a Q-tip, and now we will get the 100% silicone ready to go here. We'll get it in the caulking gun, and we're going to put a small bead starting right here. Oops, I forgot to that little plastic piece. There we go. I don't want it to stick to that. You could also do painter's tape if you want to mess around with peeling and unpeeling, but I like the idea of a little bit of anti-stick spray, because the idea is that silicone doesn't adhere to that, right? And we'll put a small bead. Now, depending on the size of the gap, kind of depends on how much you'll use here. Small gap, we just need a minuscule amount. So we will apply that in a pretty much uniform way. We want it to have a consistent bead here. We're going to take our finger in just a minute and smooth that out. All right, dab your finger in a little bit of this anti-stick spray as well to avoid a nasty mess on your finger. And you get kind of one chance at this, I think. This can be a pretty hot mess if you don't do it in one uniform fell swoop here. And you can see we have a little bit of residue on the top part of the glass, so that means you I probably applied too much. So I can very carefully kind of wipe that off. And it's clear caulking, so it's not going to be a big deal. And I realize I'm taking a hit on aesthetics a little bit by doing this, but I'm not really concerned. We're going to let that dry overnight, a good 24 hours actually. And then when you come back, it should have kind of rubberized and cured. And the idea is that it doesn't stick to the glass. Now, you might have had a little bit of sticking, so it's a good idea to take a very small and extremely sharp razor blade. Be careful not to ding your glass. That would be bad news. And when you open the door, this is what you're left with, kind of a built-up, clear threshold that is a little imperfect, but should very much get the job done. You'll notice a little more resistance depending on the shape of your glass door. That big rubber piece that blocks the glass from touching the tile when it's closed, the clear plastic, it's not rubber, it's plastic, I think, or rubberized plastic, that has a little bit of resistance as this opens and closes. But it actually gives it kind of a higher quality feel, I think. Feels heavier. Anyway, that is the idea, so that when you go to shower, we should have a 100% waterproof seal now. The water spray you're seeing there is from when the shower was turned on. Let me wipe that up, and we'll get another shot with that for the most part dry. There we go. I see no water exiting at all. So that would be an option for you. You could also build that threshold up a little bit, take it off, and just build it up by about 1/8 of an inch more. So that's option one. Now, if you don't like the idea of your door actually coming into contact with the silicone, option number two, solution number two here might be for you. So what we're going to do here, let me do a test run for you first before I do the real thing. I've got an extra threshold out in the garage, and I'm going to take some 100% silicone. And instead of what you just saw, me pushing the silicone up against the base of the door, we're going to put it in the middle of the threshold, kind of on that center line, and then we're going to take a tool that basically smooths it out like this. And the idea is that it is uniform, it is smooth, it is on the center line, and that the glass shower door does not actually touch it when it opens and closes, but it still provides that extra buildup that doesn't really affect aesthetic too much. Look at that. Very well done, very thick, very uniform. Now, doing this in practice is different from the real thing because I can move this around and have full control over all angles in the garage, but that's the idea behind it. Now, when we get this thing up into the actual real life setting, right, with the threshold already installed, we're going to apply it like this. Obviously, you want your threshold to be nice and clean, and you can prep that. Search YouTube for another video on how to prep for silicone caulking. But we're going to put a bead on like that with the door closed or open. Not a big deal. And then I've got this little caulking tool here. And you can see the angle is a little hard because I kind of run into the wall as I move my way to the right. So I had to switch it around, use my left hand, and go back the opposite way. Now you could get yourself into some trouble. I did a couple of times. I had to start all over because I messed up the line and it started getting pretty messy. So keep that in mind as you do this. You might have to clean it up, start all over again before it dries. And you definitely want to, if you notice an error and you're not happy with it, definitely get it cleaned up immediately before it dries. Otherwise, you're going to have an issue. So this would be solution number two. You do have the option of putting down tape as well. In this case, I'm putting down some clear, just some Scotch tape, but you'll want to make sure it sticks really well. This is just kind of what all I had on hand. And that would prevent it from obviously adhering to areas of the threshold that you don't want the silicone to adhere to. And then you can peel it up, again, when it's wet, not dry. And it should leave you with a really nice, clean, uniform line. Let's try that out and see how it works. So I can be a little more liberal in my application the tape does allow for errors if you've got not so much of a steady hand or if you slip or something, because that threshold is a little slippery, right? And we're going to use this other little tool that I have, just a little piece of 90-degree metal I found out in the garage. You can get creative. Something that is small that you can work with, and I'll put links down below for things that I find in terms of tools that I think might create a nice rounded or uniform shape. And get yourself some high quality 100% silicone as well. You want this to last a long time. You don't want to have to scrape this stuff off after a year because it's molding up or something. You can also use a paint scraper tool to angle it. So lots of different ideas here, but I recommend you practice first. Get yourself a piece of wood or a piece of metal out in the garage, and that kind of looks like the threshold maybe, and just try to not master, but get comfortable with your preferred method here before you do it. That would be a huge tip, huge recommendation. It's going to save you a lot of time and trouble. And at the end of the day, it's not something that you look at. It's not eye level. It is clear silicone, so some imperfections are going to be okay. You can peel up the tape when you're generally happy with it. And that, again, should leave you with a nice, crisp, uniform line. Now, after you peel up the tape, you don't want to go messing around with the silicone and fixing things. So fix it first before it dries. You got to move kind of quickly. Say you have about 5 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more. And you can kind of do some maintenance work very, very carefully. Anything that's spilled over. And this is what it looks like when it's done. And that will clog that gap, fix that gap, and keep your water from your shower on the inside, baby. Hopefully this helped.